For nearly 2 decades, writer, television host, and travel expert Rick Steves has journeyed the globe, Europe especially, taking readers and viewers with him as he goes. It's not all just been about helping people plan a good trip. As his book, Travel as a Political Act, How to Leave Your Baggage Behind explains, it's about being open to what you find when you get there. Joining us now for more is Rick Steves. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Great to be here, thanks.
There's a lot of people on the crew, especially Sheldon, who are very excited to have you here. We're all big fans.
Thank you. Well, I've got beautiful work. I'm lucky I found my niche. I love to travel. I've been doing this since I was a kid and bringing home the lessons I've learned from my travels.
So when you say travel as a political act, what do you mean?
Travel in a way that gets you out of your comfort zone, that challenges your beliefs. I was raised, thinking the world is a pyramid with the United States on top and everybody else trying to get there. And then I realized, no, that's what we think, but other people have a different mindset. And I celebrate that.
How did you come to that realization?
Hanging out with smart people who see things, who find different truths to be self-evident and God-given. And then time and time again, I'm learning how ethnocentric I am. My parents said it's the work ethic. Well, no, it's not the work ethic. My Norwegian relatives have a Norwegian work ethic, and my friends in Spain have a Spanish work ethic, certainly different than my work ethic as an American. I like my work ethic, but it's not the right work ethic. In the United States, we have the shortest vacations in the rich world, and we're thrilled about that. It's crazy.
Well, you get into a lot of different topics in the book, which I really enjoyed reading, to try to give us a broader view of what the world is outside of our own space. And in this book, you talk about striving to become what you call a temporary loco when you travel. How do you accomplish that?
You become a temporary local when you want to be a cultural chameleon. I think there's something almost physiological about me when I'm traveling. I embrace what the locals are doing. If tea makes no sense to me in this hemisphere, I've never made a pot of tea. When I go to England, a spot of tea, Bob's your uncle, it's just the right thing to do. When I'm in Tuscany, it's a full-bodied glass of red wine. When I'm in Portugal, it's a sprightly white wine called a Vino Verde. When I'm at home in Seattle, I never go home after a long day of work and think, I feel like a nice, cloudy glass of ouzo. I don't like ouzo in this hemisphere, but when I'm in Greece, as the sun's going down on a beautiful island, to have a glass of ouzo and sip that and be surrounded by Greece, I'm part of that scene, you see. So a lot of my friends say chocolate is to die for. That's nonsense, unless you're in Belgium, and then chocolate is to die for. So I just like to, and I'm always teaching budget travel, so it saves you money, it makes you more friends, you get better service and more smiles, you learn something, and you might like it. So, when you're in France, eat escargot.
And it sounds like it's also, you're being in the moment when you're in a particular place.
It's the mark of a good traveler.
Right. Right now we're really obsessed with taking pictures of everything, of where we are. And there's been some, on social media, people taking pictures taking selfies, where maybe they shouldn't be taking selfies. How do you feel about our current obsession with taking pictures of every experience that we have?
Well, I've got a TV crew following me around, so what can I can't put people down for not taking pictures of themselves because I've got a staff doing that when I'm making my TV shows, which is about a third of the time I'm in Europe. I'm in Europe for 4 months out of the year with my work. But I will tell you, as an observer, it's really hard these days for people to be in the moment. I was with a group in Lisbon last year, one of our tour groups, and we had a fado performance, beautiful local blues, folk music, and the group was there. They were all excited to play for 25 Americans. And all of us were just going, bam, bam, bam. And I just said, excuse me, let's put our cameras away. Let's be in the moment. Let's enjoy the concert. And we'll have one piece later on where we can all take our cameras out and shoot. But right now, I don't want you taking pictures. I don't want you putting stuff up on your Facebook page. I want you to, out of respect for these musicians, if nothing else, enjoy the concert. We focused on the music. It was great. And then everybody was comfortable because they could get the cameras out later and do that. But we were in Venice trying to film lovers on gondolas. I couldn't find any couple on a gondola going under the Bridge of Sighs that wasn't playing with their camera. And I just said, put the camera away.
You're missing the point.
I said, I finally asked somebody, is there any way you could just put the camera away and we could take a picture of you like faking like you're lovers on the canal, because they're more in love with their screen and telling their friends that they're having a good time
Right.
than being in that moment. And when you're traveling, be in the moment. You're walking behind a waterfall in Iceland. This is like nothing you've ever seen before. Stop worrying about sharing it with your friends. They know you're cute. They know you're rich. They know you got a good-looking boyfriend. They know you're traveling the world. Just put the camera away and be there, you see. Because then you get home and you never were there. You got a good picture of it, but you're never there. I think it's a real shame.
Well, we're talking about your TV show. I think we should show a clip of it to everybody. And this is a clip about Denmark.
Oh, good.
Let's take a look.
Visiting Copenhagen, I'm struck by how well this society works, with an orderliness without rigidity, with its sleek sense of design, and a general calmness. It's balanced. It seems they've got a system that works, and the good sense to enjoy it.
We'll go local and experience some Danish delights.
Yes.
Yeah.
Flirt with the mermaid. Imagine tooting a 3,000-year-old horn. Check out the dazzling crown of Denmark's larger-than-life king. Relax in the city's old sailors' quarter. Get face-to-face with art in the Glyptotek. Kick back in one of the original alternative communes and revel in Europe's queen of amusement parks.
You have a chapter in your book on Denmark, but it's less about the sites that you mentioned in the clip we just showed, but it's more about taxation. Why would a travel writer want to write about taxes?
Oh, I've been writing about travel since I was a kid. This is all I do. And I keep saying America because my passion really is to inspire my countrymen, Americans, to venture beyond Orlando. I think Canadians have a much broader worldview than people in my country. And I'm nervous about, for the good of the world as well as for our own well-being, the ethnocentricity of Americans. So my mission is to get Americans to travel, And you travel to see the mermaid, of course, when you're in Copenhagen, because that's the clichetic thing, Hans Christian Andersen. But, okay, that'll get you there. But the real challenge is to have transformational travel experience. And when you go to Scandinavia, you're going to the wealthiest, least church-going, most highly taxed, most highly literate, most content part of Europe. That's really quite something. And I'm on a mission to go, what makes these people tick? And I love to ask my friends, how can you Danish people so docilely pay such high taxes? Because Americans will live and die on taxation issues. We just do not want to be taxed. And you got smart people in Scandinavia with more time with their families, with a more sustainable society and a better environment, with better relations with their neighbors, that pay a lot of taxes and are glad they do. And politicians do not succeed by promising tax breaks. I'm challenged by that. And as a travel writer, I'd love to tune my travelers into that so when they do go to Denmark, they can understand that there's a rationale for not being stupid with your independence and not wasting money through taxation, but there's a rationale for societies to work together to make their community stronger. I mean, a lot of Americans are afraid of national health care because they really don't know anybody that has national health care. They've just had their perspective shaped by the media that they consume. But if an American was to go to Europe and ask their friends in Europe, what about paying a little more taxes and having a situation where everybody, regardless of the wealth of their mom and dad, has access to quality health care and quality education, what's that like? You might go home and think, it's not communism.
You get a better, you get a broader worldview.
You get a much broader view. And for Americans to hang out with Americans and see tired cliches on stage, go back to their American-style hotel and complain about the air conditioning and catch up on their sports feed, they're missing an opportunity to get out there and broaden their perspectives through travel. The most beautiful souvenir you can bring home is a broader perspective. And that's determined by how good you are at challenging truths you were raised thinking were self-evident and God-given. I love it. I started traveling as a conservative. I believed America right or wrong, and I travel and I realize, we're a beautiful country. We're a wonderful 4% of this planet, but the only thing exceptional about people in the United States is their ability to think that they're exceptional in God's eyes. That's pretty loopy.
Well, and I want to go back to the chapter on Denmark. You mentioned your philosophy of immigration, which you capture in the phrase melt immigrants. What do you mean with that phrase?
Melt immigrants. Well, this is a This is a very interesting issue in the United States, and I know is in Canada also, because we have immigrant communities that are struggling to get the respect that they believe and that they deserve and that they do deserve. And it's just my personal life story. My grandparents homesteaded in Alberta, in Edmonton, and I think their initiative was to melt, to assimilate, because 2 generations later, I'm still Lutheran. I still celebrate Christmas in a Norwegian way. I still have a lot of Scandinavian friends in my community. I'm proud of my Norwegian heritage. I go to the Sons of Norway pancake breakfast every chance I get, but I have assimilated into America, and I'm thankful for it. I'm really so glad I do not speak Norwegian. I'm Norwegian in my DNA.
Doesn't it make you feel like you've lost a sense of yourself, of your identity, by not speaking your
Not at
birth
all.
language?
Not at all. I am so American and I'm so Norwegian, but I've assimilated. Now, I'm not advocating that. I think it's a complicated issue. But I wrote about that in Denmark because in Europe there's a big problem with immigrant communities coming in with no intent to embrace the local lifestyle or the local culture, but they're squatting, frankly.
Do you think it's no intent, or do you think that they maybe, I don't know, they don't have the resources, or if at a certain age you can't learn a new language?
No, I think it's
Do
no
we know
intent.
that it's no intent, though?
We don't know. I think it's no intent because of what I've seen. I've seen Pakistanis in Denmark who are Danes as much as a blonde person. This has nothing to do with the color of your skin or your religion. It has an attitude thing. The Pakistani I met spoke Danish. She was a guide at a local museum. She knew the history of Copenhagen better than her blonde friends. She was Danish from a Pakistani family. And I went to the Netherlands on that same trip, and I met Algerians who had been there for 2 or 3 generations that did not speak a word of Dutch. And they were connected with Algeria through modern satellite dishes and media where they could be Algerian in a richer country and enjoy better governance and so on. And there were a problem in the Netherlands, whereas the assimilating Pakistanis in Denmark were a bonus for that society. They brought diversity to that society. They were a fun new dimension, but they had the philosophy of, and I think this might be a difference between Canada and the United States. In the United States, we celebrate, or we have celebrated, melting in to assimilate. Whereas I think in Canada, it's more multicultural. And again, I don't really have, it's not a thing that I have in my little political bag of
Well, what do you think
cruises.
the benefits are for immigrants melting into their new home?
Your children have a better world economically, and job opportunities, and just celebrating the fact that they are part of this culture. They are Canadian, they are American, rather than they are Algerians who happen to be living in the Netherlands, you see. But again, it's not I don't feel strongly about it. I'm generally pretty predictably liberal or progressive, and this is one case where I think I'm more conservative. And I think it's a pragmatic thing.
Well, it's interesting that you keep saying that you're conservative because in addition to your travel expertise, you've also become known as an advocate for marijuana law reform. And we're going to actually show a clip from a speech you made in Spokane, Washington.
Okay.
Sheldon, please roll.
And people were coming up to me and saying, all over the country, and saying, I love your books, I love your TV show, and I like the other stuff you're doing too. But they would never say the word, and I'd say, what do you mean? Marijuana, say it, you know? And we can talk about this. We're locking up 800,000 people a year. We're spending billions of dollars on it. We've got a civil war in Mexico. We can talk about marijuana. Once in a blue moon, somebody will email me and say, I know what you think about marijuana, and we're not going to use your guidebooks, and we're not going to take your tours. And I just think Europe's going to be more fun without you.
How did you first get involved in the fight for the decriminalization of marijuana?
You know, ever since I was a kid, I've realized that people smoke marijuana, and they do it illegally. And it's a big lie in the United States. There's not a reservoir of decent people that would love to ruin their lives smoking pot if only it was legal. People who want to smoke pot do. And they do it in a criminal way, and they lie to their friends, they lie to their workmates, they lie to their family. And I just thought, are we a free nation? Do we have civil liberties? I'm a hardworking, church-going, tax-paying, kid-raising American. If I work hard all day long and I want to go home and smoke a joint and just stare at the fire for 3 hours, that's my civil liberty. I feel very strongly about that. Now, can I smoke and go out and drive and hurt somebody? No, they should throw the book at me. You know, you can't hurt people, but you've got the civil liberty in your own home as an adult to smoke pot if you want to. I have been an outspoken advocate of this. I was the co-sponsor, a funder, leading spokesperson for the first law in the United States in Washington State and in Colorado, where we legalize, tax, and regulate recreational marijuana, not medical, but recreational. Every 2 years I've gone on the road, spent a lot of time and a lot of money in different states when the election season's up. In 2012 it was Washington, 2014 Oregon, 2016 Massachusetts and Maine, last year Michigan, Illinois, North Dakota. And whenever I give a talk, I'm an unscary, nice guy who's advocating legalizing marijuana. It's not pro-marijuana, it's not pro-drugs, it's anti-prohibition, it's pro-civil liberties, it's anti-racism. In the United States, it's not rich white guys that are getting busted, it's poor people and people of color. It's the new Jim Crow. It's a very convenient way for people to disenfranchise young black men. We got 8 years of George Bush because 1 million black men in Florida have no voting rights because they're ex-felons. Most of those because of marijuana. Even now, we're still arresting 700,000 or 800,000 people a year, whereas in some states it's a thriving business. I could talk all day about marijuana, but in Washington State, my state, illegal marijuana was rivaling apples as the biggest cash crop in the state. And it was a black market, enriching and empowering gangs and organized crime. And if we could just take that black market, turn it into a highly regulated, highly taxed legal market, we could take that power away from gangs and organized crime, we could employ people, and we could help people exercise that civil liberty without having to lie about it. And this last year, 6 years after we legalized, we sold $1 billion of legal marijuana in Washington State. That generated $300 million of tax revenue for Olympia, our state capital. My governor, who was not in favor of this on the day we legalized, he's in favor of it now. He doesn't have to arrest 10,000 people in my state for nonviolent marijuana offenses. And use has not gone up. That's the amazing thing. The numbers are in. You'll find that in Canada. Use among adults, it might creep up a little bit. Use among teens does not go up. That's very clear from the statistics in states that have done this. DUIs don't go up. Crime doesn't go up. What goes up is tax revenue, civil liberties, and you've taken a thriving black market and you've turned it into this highly regulated.
Legalized it. Well,
And you know what else, Nam? You can focus on a more serious problem, which is the opioid addiction and hard drug problems. In Europe, the two most progressive countries, as in consideration of their marijuana laws, the Netherlands and Portugal, started those laws because they had terrible problems with hard drug addiction. And they wanted to have more credibility, take the marijuana out of the occasion, treat it like alcohol. It's a drug that needs to be regulated and so on. But then you deal with credibility and focus on the real problem, which is hard drug abuse.
Well, in the book, I was just going to ask you about what the U.S. can learn from Europe. But you say that there are countries who are afraid to legalize marijuana because of the pushback that they would get back from the U.S.
Well, in my book, In Travel as a Political Act, I was remembering I was leaving the squatter hippie community in Denmark, Copenhagen, Christiania, and a friend said, be careful with your marijuana because here in Denmark, every year we have to arrest a couple of pot smokers in order to maintain favored trade status with the United States of America. And I thought, that's unbelievable. And then I learned more about it. And yes, we in the United States have made this trade policy where any country that dares legalize marijuana, all the signatories of this bill will have to wage trade sanctions on that country along with the United States. And that's the way we've intimidated countries to decriminalize rather than legalize. Decriminalize is just a silly way to get around having to have a fight with the United States on this issue. And I know in recent months, as Canada has been more progressive and pragmatic and smart about the prohibition against marijuana, that they're getting threats from the United States that this might have trade consequences with Canada. And to me, that's an embarrassment as an American that we would think we could get involved in your complicated policies on this persistent and important issue. And I would just hope that Canada is not intimidated by American policies because the truth is going to win out on this. And I know in the United States, in the next couple of election cycles, we will reschedule marijuana and the prohibition against marijuana will be over like we had the prohibition against alcohol in the 30s. And in that, when we finally re-legalized alcohol, people weren't saying booze is good. They were coming around to the recognition that the law that's designed to protect us against alcohol abuse is causing more problems to our society than the alcohol abuse itself. Let's take the crime out of the equation, treat it as an education and health challenge, and get pragmatic. And I don't think anybody would advocate to recriminalize alcohol, although there are a few counties in the United States that have maintained the prohibition as is their right, and they are still dry. Just like with new marijuana laws, counties can opt out and be smoke-free.
As long as the conversation is happening.
Yeah.
You spend the final chapter of this book encouraging people to get involved in causes that interest them. And you write, travel becomes a political act only if you act, if you do something positive with your broadened perspective once you return home. How has travel informed your own choice to devote time and energy to the affordable housing issue?
Well, when you travel, you gain empathy. To me, empathy is a beautiful thing. If you don't travel, you don't humanize people who are struggling. When you do travel, you realize this is a real issue. Housing, affordable housing is a big deal in America. I would imagine it's a big deal in Canada.
Yes.
When you take it to a broader definition, it's land rights. In the developing world, it's land rights. In the United States, we've contributed to a lot of bloodshed and heartache in Central America on internal civil wars and so on. And we frame it as communists are trying to take away the freedom of these capitalist countries. I was just down in Guatemala. It's not communist against capitalist. It's not communism against freedom. It's landless peasant farmers that want to own enough patch of ground to grow their rice and beans against big corporate farms that want to have more land to grow their export crops to the United States. I was just down in Guatemala and talking with an indigenous community that was organizing to get land rights. 6 of their colleagues had been killed in the last year for organizing against these big corporations that make coffee and sugar. And the phrase they told me was, if the sugar plantation wants your land and you're a little farmer, they'll say, we can negotiate with you or we can negotiate with your widow, but we want to buy this land. Yeah. Now that's a reality. You don't get that when you sit in the United States and watch the news, but if you travel to Guatemala and talk to indigenous people fighting for land rights, you see that's the reality. And that's one reason I feel responsible as an American who's a traveler, is to come home and challenge my American neighbors, my fellow citizens, to take responsibility for our policies, because our policies in a lot of cases are good, but in a lot of cases they are heartbreaking. And if people knew the humanity of it all, and they would recognize just the ethic and the truth of believing, if I'm a taxpayer in the United States, every bomb that falls and every bullet that flies from my government has my name on it. I'm not a pacifist. We have to kill people occasionally, but it's a big decision, and I want to humanize the people who are supposed to be my enemies. And when you humanize people through travel, and then you come home and you share that perspective, you're making travel a political act. And I'm nervous that Americans can step into the voting booth. In the privacy of that voting booth, they don't vote for what's right. They vote for what's right for them.
You mentioned that you encourage your own staff at your tour company to hold you accountable, and that they've asked you to think about how your tours can be moved to being carbon neutral. Mm-hmm. Is that even possible with air travel being such a big air polluter?
It's ethical for a person who's a travel business person like myself to be mindful of the fact that those of us who fly are contributing mightily to global warming by all the carbon that's caused by flying. And I think you can be, everything we're doing has a little carbon footprint, but flying is huge. You can recycle all you want or drive a different kind of car, but if you fly to Europe and back, that dwarfs all the other stuff you're doing. Now, as a businessman, I'm profiting from the fact that I take 30,000 people to Europe every year from the United States on my tours. 30,000 Americans fly to Europe and back because they want to take a Rick Steves tour, and I make a lot of money on it. It's wrong for me not to figure out how much money does it take out of my profit to make this carbon neutral. And according to experts, it's $30 per flight invested smartly to mitigate the contribution we have to climate change. So what I want to do is take the 30,000 people we fly, multiply it by $30, that's $900,000, round it up to $1 million, and have as a logical cost of my doing business $1 million to make my flyers carbon neutral. That takes a big share out of my profit, but I'm going to do that. And just flying to Toronto yesterday from Seattle, I was writing my proposal out, and we are going to have a portfolio of 6 or 7 businesses that will invest this portfolio of $1 million in, and then we can proudly say our travelers are carbon neutral. And my focus is going to be on climate-smart agriculture in the developing world, focusing on empowering women to run their farms and run their families, because it's women who really are the responsible ones in so much of the developing world. And if we can help them have smart stoves, so they do less deforestation, if we can have drought-resistant seeds, if we can be educated so our kids can grow up not stunted and can contribute, we can then have a smarter agricultural world in the developing world, and we can, in that alone, will mitigate a lot of the carbon that goes up into the atmosphere. I also want to support advocacy organizations that work to educate and encourage our lawmakers to be sustainability minded, because in our society, corporations are legally obligated to profit maximize for their stockholders in the short term. And I think that's wrong, because we are profiting extra because we don't have to factor in externalities like the cost to the environment, and we should pay for the contribution to climate change if we are ethical business people. So as a little player in the travel industry, I'm going to make this very public and hope to inspire or shame other tour companies into taking a little bit of their profit and investing it smartly. And they can do it in solar panels if they want to, but I want to do it in a kind of a twofer way, because I'm really interested in developing world issues. And I want to empower women in the developing world to be able to be leaders in their communities so their small farmers can be more climate smart in their agriculture.
Mr. Steves, it's been so great having you here. Thank you so much for opening up our minds and our into the big world if we don't get a chance to see it. Thank you so much.
It's a delight to share these ideas with you, and happy travels.
Thank you so much. Travel well.
All right.
The Agenda in the Summer with Nam Kiwanuka is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.